يجي الله يثني ولكنها سورة مباركة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. والصلاة والسلام على آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المظلومين واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من يوم عداوتهم إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه وهو أصدق القائلين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. صراط الله. The verse of Quran that I have just recited before you is from Surah Al-Imran, verse 169, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "And do not imagine that those who have died in the way of God, that they are dead. Rather they are alive and their Lord sustains them." And during these months of Muharram and Safar, this verse is particularly relevant because it is very common for many of us, particularly in this age, to be going for pilgrimage or ziyarat, particularly to Karbala and Najaf. And so what I thought I would do in this gathering here, when we have gathered in the days of Adha, is to speak about the spiritual adab or etiquette of ziyarat. Meaning, not so much a to-do list to say that when you're going for ziyarah, this is what you must do and this is what you must do. This is of course all there in the books, and I will mention some of it briefly. But particularly to try and understand what is to be gotten out of this. Why is there so much emphasis in going for ziyarah? And as I said, it is very common for people to go for ziyarah nowadays. Whereas in the past, people would go once in a while and they would be able to say to you, "I remember when I went to Karbala in 1964, and I remember when I went to Karbala in 1943, and nowadays we don't even have count of how often they've gone, right? There are people who go every other month, they're there. So we need to sort of understand, when you go there, what should you expect to get out of it? And when you come back, what difference does it need to make in our lives? As far as the emphasis for ziyarat, of course, there is a lot of emphasis. We have, for example, in one hadith that says that those of you who are rich and well off, you should come and visit us to our graves every 6 months, twice a year, at a minimum. And those of you who are not so well off, you should come visit us at least once in a year. These are from the Imams themselves saying that you should come visit our graves. Now, of course, when we go there, we go for many reasons. And as I said, in the books of du'as and ziyarat, there are a lot of these benefits mentioned. And we sometimes focus on these only. Just as an example, if you look at the going for ziyarat of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, Sheikh Abbas Khuni in his Mafatul Jinan, he says the benefits of going to Abu Abdullah are so numerous, you cannot even enumerate them. And he says, I do not even know where to begin describing them. And then he lists some of them. It removes sorrow and anxiety from your lives. If you have hum and gham, then he says, go for ziyarat of Hussein. If you have fulfilled your obligation of Hajj, then there is greater reward than even going for Hajj and Umrah and Jihad. forgiveness of sins, protection from the horrors of the grave, protection from difficulty when your soul leaves your body, what we call sakaratul maut, lengthening your life, increasing your sustenance or your rizq. Every dirham, or in our case, every dollar that you spend towards your journey to Karbala, the reward of it is thousands of times more than if you would have given that in charity. When a man sets out of his home, or a woman, going to Aba Abdullah, then 4,000 angels march before him and escort him there and escort him back. And as they do that, they pray for him. All the prophets of Allah and all the angels and all the imams go to Karbala. And when they go to Karbala, at the haram of Imam Hussein, they pray for the zawar of Hussein. So the Anbiya's dua as well are with his zawar. On the day of Arafat, when Allah looks with mercy to His creation, He first looks at the zawar of Hussein, then He looks at the zawar in Arafat. And on the day of judgment, every person will envy the Za'ir of Hussein when he sees his status. And he will wish he had gone, for the one who never went to Karbala and could have gone. And Shk Abbas Qumi says the traditions are so many, he says I cannot even narrate them all in my book. So these are some of the emphasis. Or for example, when you look at the ziyarat of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rada salawatullahi wa salamu, because Mashhad is so far away, particularly in the past, it was out of the Arabian Peninsula or the lands of the Arab. It was in the land of the Persians, near the Russian border, very, very far. It was a long, arduous journey to get there. So Imam Rada alayhi salam himself says, there are many ahadith on the fadila of going to Mashhad, but he himself says, if you take the trouble to come and see me in Mashhad, I will help you on the day of judgment at 3 places where no one else will help you. I will help you at the time when your book of deeds is given to you. I will help you on the bridge that you have to cross, the Sirat. And I will help you at the scales, at the mizan where your deeds are weighed. So there are so many of such ahadith. But when you look at these ahadith, there is a fine print to them. It says, Manzar al-Husayn arifan bihaqqi. Whosoever visits Hussein, knowing the right of Hussein, wajabat lahul jannah. Then Jannah is wajib for him. Wajib means he must go to paradise. It is impossible that he will not go. But there is that fine print, arifan bihaqqi. And that is where a lot of people miss the point. And that is why when you go to Karbala, you will see amongst the millions, there are people there who are there to pickpocket you, they are there to steal you. It doesn't mean wajabat lahul jannah as well. So we need to sometimes step back and really think about this and say, why am I going for ziyarah? Or why am I doing anything tied to Karbala? Nowadays, for example, what has become very popular is going for the walk, which wasn't there in the past, right? Everybody who goes to Karbala, you hear, is walking from Najaf to Karbala or from a certain distance to Karbala. It has become very, very common. And this is a tradition that has been done for hundreds of years. There are great, great ulama who have walked from their own cities, from Basra, from wherever it is, to Karbala. But what has become common nowadays is that along with the walk, we do fundraising. Right? This has become very, very popular. You will see it is popular in North America, Europe, in Africa as well. Everybody you hear going, they are raising money for a cause, for an orphanage, or for something like that. And sometimes you are actually bombarded with this because everybody's asking you for donations, right? They're asking you to pledge or to sponsor them for the walk. And it is a good thing, it is a noble thing. By no way or no means am I saying we shouldn't do that. But sometimes we need to think, does everything we do have to have a secondary reason for it? You know? Can we not do certain things only out of love for Hussein? Which I'm not saying again that we shouldn't raise the money. Certainly we can do it, but our attitude when we do the walk has to be, because this whole idea of sponsoring and fundraising, as you know, wasn't there in the Arab culture when they used to walk for hundreds of years. This was something that we have introduced because of our experience in the West. Because here, if somebody is going to walk from Toronto to Montreal, he doesn't want that to be a wasted effort, or if he's cycling or if he's doing anything like that, he wants somebody to acknowledge and give some donation. He will do it for a cause. He will say, if I am willing to take so much trouble and do all that walk, are you willing to respect and honor that effort I'm putting in and pledge some donation? Right? Now, a lot of the people who will give you that money, they would probably give it to you even if you didn't walk from here to Montreal or cycle. If it was a good cause, they would still give you the money. But it is that culture we have, that we do something to show that we ourselves believe in the cause. So we have taken that with us to Karbala as well. And we need to ask ourselves that if I didn't have a sponsor, would I still walk from Najaf to Karbala? Or does it have to be about, there are some who are competing as well, who can raise more money. And, the more I can raise, the better I feel that, when I'm walking with Hussein, my walk is not wasted. It is for a purpose. I've raised more money for an orphanage. And that is all fine, as I say, I'm not against it. But when you have done that, you have done it for the orphanage. You have not done it for Hussein. What I'm trying to get at is, it is not a wasted effort if you walked from Najaf to Karbala, even if you didn't raise any money. Because there were great Marajas who have done this. And if it was, the Marja himself should know that he could have sat at home and written a book in the time it took him to walk from Najaf to Karbala. But he gives up that precious time of his and walks. Because that walk itself is meant to do something, which is the subject that I'm trying to get to. That the ziyarah itself is supposed to do something to us. In other words, when that individual, that pious individual, that marja, that mujtahid, that alim, that faqih, that arif, is walking, the journey itself is more important sometimes than the arrival. Because as he is walking, he is changing and evolving. Think about that for a moment. Put yourself in their shoes. You are walking to Abu Abdullah not for any reason except for his love. That's all. And every step you take on the tarmac or on the sand, your heart is simply saying, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Labbaik, Ya Hussein, Labbaik, Ya Hussein. If you can keep that state of awareness, that state of consciousness, then by the time you begin to see the golden dome of Hussein, you have changed as a person. As opposed to, for example, you are walking with somebody on your way to Karbala, you have raised money for orphanages, thousands of dollars, but while you're walking, you're talking about business, you're talking about Microsoft, you're backbiting someone, you're talking about corruption in Iraq, you're talking about this and that, and when you get there, Assalamu alaikum ya Abu Abdullah. Those are very two different walks. In other words, we must find a spirit and a meaning to everything we do. If you can recite as-salawat. So I've spent enough time talking about this walk, but really what I want to talk about is the ziyarah, because that is what most of us do or aspire to do. So I think part of the reason why the Imams alayhi salam so emphasized so much that we should go visit them so frequently is to keep that connection and that bond and that love with them. Bring your children to Karbala. Why? So your children feel attached to us. It is one thing for them to know about the Imam, to cry for the Imam, to do matam for the Imam, and to actually go visit him and see the land of Karbala itself. It has a lasting effect on their minds, on their hearts, on their souls. They are much less likely to ever go astray, for example, or to lose faith, or to doubt in their faith, or to change from the madhab of the Ahlul Bayt to any other when they realize the rich heritage and how precious Karbala and Hussein is to them. And this is the beauty of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. They ask and demand things from us, but it is for us. Just like in the Quran, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is called to tell the Muslims, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. And this is a point I have made in a previous lecture elsewhere, so you may have heard this, that when you read the Quran, you see that all the other prophets, when they were asked for their ajr, they said to their people, we don't want any reward. In ajriya illa ala Allah, qul la as'alukum alayhi ajran, in ajriya illa ala Allah. All the Anbiya, they said to their people, we do not want any reward from you. Our reward is with Allah. The final prophet is the only prophet who demands a reward. He says, I don't want any reward except the love of my family. So at face value, it seems like the other prophets were higher because they said, we don't want anything. They were more selfless. They said, we want only our reward from Allah. But actually, the prophet is greater than them. Why? Because when he's asked for a reward, he's giving more back. He is, instead of saying, I don't want anything, my reward is with Allah. He says, not only do I not want anything, but here, I'm going to give you more that you will never be able to pay me back for. What? I am asking you to love my family. Why? Because that is what will keep you on the right path. So in saying, I want mawadda for my qurbah, he's actually giving. He is not taking. In the same manner, when the Imam say, come for our ziyarah, they are not taking. They are giving something. The other thing we do when we go for ziyarah, obviously, is we renew our pledge to our Imam, which is something we could do from a distance, from afar. But doing it in person obviously has a different meaning when you stand before their rawdah and you pledge and renew your allegiance to them. Yet another aspect of the ziyarah is to purify ourselves. And this is one of those things that I want to just spend a few minutes on. That when we go for pilgrimage or when we go for ziyarah, there has to be this sense of I am going to purify myself. I'm not just going to visit the Imam, but I'm going to purge myself of my past misdeeds and I'm going to purify myself. And I will give you, proof of that. But typically, when we pray in this world, you will see that at the end of my lectures as well, I always pray that may Allah bless us with the ziyarat of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad in this world and their shafa'ah yawm al-qiyamah, right? Bless us with the opportunity to go visit them in this world and their intercession on the Day of Judgment. But actually, if you think about it, they're both the same. Their ziyarat is their shafa'at and their shafa'at is their ziyarat. Okay, let me explain this. When do we want their shafa'at? On the Day of Judgment. Because we know from hadith that there is not a single person, regardless of how great he might imagine his deeds are, who will enter paradise without the intercession of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. It is mahal, it is impossible that anyone will enter without needing their help. And this Allah has done to honor them as well. So that Allah will not forgive everyone's sins directly. He could if He wanted to. But to show their status and rank, He will insist that you go to them first for intercession. Now, when we go to them, inshallah, on the Day of Judgment, and ask, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the Imams alayhi salam to intercede for us, we will have to meet them. So in asking for their shafa'ah, we will have to do their ziyarah, isn't it? So that shafa'ah also includes ziyarah. But when I go to them on the Day of Judgment, in this world you can see the thousands and thousands of people thronging at their shrines. It's not even seeing them, it's just a shrine. But it is so difficult to get to their graves. On the Day of Judgment, when they're physically present, you can imagine the crowd, right? Think of it like million-folds more, because now everyone knows this is the only door you can go through. So everyone is trying to get there. The first thought that will cross our mind is, am I worthy of presenting myself before them? When they see me, what will they say to me? Will they embrace me? Will they welcome me with a smile? Or will they turn away? Or will they tell me I was not faithful to my claim of being their Shia? So that shafa'ah includes the ziyarah, but it also has that idea of am I worthy of going in their presence? The same can be said for their ziyarah here, because when I go for their pilgrimage, when I go to visit them, I am also asking them to intercede for me and ask forgiveness for my sins on my behalf to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in their ziyarah as well there is shafa'ah. And that is why we said one of the benefits of going to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, for example, is that all your sins are forgiven. You are cleansed from your sins like the day you were born. So there is shafa'ah there as well in ziyarah. Which therefore means that when I go for the ziyarah of Hussein or any of the Imam alayhi salam, this thought must also cross my mind. Am I worthy of going in their presence? Now, obviously in terms of my deeds, I'm not worthy of going in their presence. So the only yardstick and measure that will give me the courage and the strength to step my foot into their shrine, knowing fully well that if I was to be accounted of my deeds, and this is an Imam who is a proof of Allah, which means he sees my thoughts, he knows my every action, past as well, right? And therefore I am ashamed in that sense to present myself before him. The only thing that will give me the courage to step my foot into his haram is love for him. Is this hope that my love for him will allow his grace and his love and his blessing to oversee and ignore my actions. Why? Because he is a proof of Allah. And if Allah is Sattar al-Ayub, if Allah conceals my sins, and if Allah is Arhamur Rahimin, then he represents that mercy of Allah. And therefore he too will conceal and overlook that sin and welcome me into his presence. So there is this idea that we must keep in mind, first of all, that when I'm going for ziyarah, with what audacity do I go before the Imam? I must go with love rather than with thinking, I am doing something great, or in any way, na'udhu billah, I am doing a favor, or that if we weren't there in such large numbers, then who would have come for the ziyarah of this Imam? That sort of thought must never cross our mind. Now, think about the days when the Imams were physically present and visible to the people. There were two kinds of people who used to go and visit the Imams. When you read the books of Hadith, you will see that the Imams used to have a lot of visitors during the day. They would come to their house, they would knock, ask for permission to enter, just like we go for ziyarah and we ask for permission to enter. But there were two kinds of people that used to go and sit with the Imam. There was one kind that used to go because they had what we call a shopping list. They wanted favors. So they would come to the Imam and they would sit and cry about their poverty and their hardship and their debts and how much they have to pay back to people, and their child is sick and they have this problem and they have that problem. And of course the Imam, as a representative of Allah and being their Imam as well, would help them. And there was nothing wrong in doing that as well, because the fact that they acknowledge and know that this is someone who can help me and somebody who is special, right? The Imam as well would help them in turn. But there used to be another group of people as well that would go there primarily only out of love for them. Just because I have not seen you, my Imam, for such a long time. I have come to sit in your presence and enjoy your company and your love and take some advice from you and learn from you on how I can better myself as a human being. And these are the individuals whose names we know today. When we hear names like Abu Basir, and we hear names like Zurara bin A'yun and so on, they are the ones who would sit from the Imam, listen, learn and write their words down, which we call hadith. And those hadith are what we use today to derive our laws of fiqh, to derive our understanding of akhlaq, to understand our aqaid. All those others who came just for favors, we don't even know their names. And because it was more for a selfish reason, they benefited for their own selves, but that did not benefit us directly. The ones who went selflessly and out of love, they are the ones that we look up to, that we pray for, that we praise, that whose names are written in Al-Kafi and in the other books of Hadith. They are the ones who we are indebted to because of their relationship with the Imam. And therefore we must also strive to have that kind of relationship with the Imam. That when I go for ziyarah, I may have certain needs for which I am going to the Imam. That is perfectly fine. But my primary reason, as I said in the example of the walk, as should be in the example of the ziyarah, should be the act of love. To be in the presence of Imam and to purify ourselves so that just as we are proud of having them as our imams, they too should be proud of having us as their Shia. And there are many, many narrations that speak about how much love the imams have for their Shia. Numerous ahadith actually. Now, I said I will give you some proof of this. شكرا لله الصلاة على محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. I said I will give you proof of the fact that ziyarah primarily wants us to experience, to purify ourselves. If you look at a book like Mafatih al-Jinan, for example, in the adab of going for the ziyarah, you look at the list of things that Sheikh Abbas Ummi has narrated from hadith, from the imams, of course. Like everything he says, do this, do this, do this when you go for ziyarah. He is quoting Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam or Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam and so on. You see that they're all tied to self-purification. For example, the first thing he says is that before you leave your home to set out for your journey, you do ghusl with the intention that you're going for ziyarah. Now ghusl, as you know, is an act of purification. But the idea is that in order for us to have pure thoughts and a pure heart, our bodies must be pure, our clothes must be pure. Because an outer purity reflects an inner purity. An outward sense of being dirty or unkempt reflects an inner sense of confusion or dirt. Right? That is why Islam emphasizes all these things about taking a bath, using perfume, clipping the nails, trimming body hair, keeping ourselves clean. This is because this has a direct impact and effects not only on our health, but also on the state of our minds. A healthy mind, healthy thoughts, and therefore healthy spirit, heart, faith, all tied to the body. Right? So ghusl. Then we are told, make sure before you go for ziyarah, you have no debts to pay. Make sure you have not hurt anyone's feelings. If you have hurt anyone's feelings, and you know there is somebody, particularly those who are related to you, that may be upset with you, make sure you ask them for forgiveness. Right? And this is actually emphasized so much that we are told in one narration that there was a Shia, very famous Shia known as Ali bin Yaqteen. Ali bin Yaqteen was a Shia of Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam. And he was also a vizier of the Caliph Harun al-Rashid in Baghdad. So he used to do taqiyya basically. He was actually not disclosing his faith because through that high position in government, he was able to help a lot of the Shias. And one day, there was a man called Ibrahim in Baghdad, who was also a Shia, and he used to drive camels for people. That is why he was known as Ibrahim al-Jammal. Jammal is from Jamal, basically. People who used to either drive a camel for others, or they would organize camels for people when they wanted to go on a journey. And Ibrahim al-Jammal went to see Ali bin Yaqteen. And because Ali bin Yaqteen was a minister and of a high rank, he basically denied him access. He did not allow him to come and meet him. And we are told in this narration that Ali bin Yaqteen the following year went to Medina. And at the time, Imam al-Kadhim was in Medina. So he came to see Imam al-Kadhim. And Imam al-Kadhim refused to see him. Because this is something that we have numerous narrations about, that when we do certain things, our imams are aware of our actions. And when he asked why the imam would not see him, the imam sent a message to him. He said, because you have hurt your brother in faith, because you, thinking you are a minister, refused to see Ibrahim al-Jammal, that is why I do not see you. And Ali bin Yaqteen, because he was a man of piety as well, he actually went back to Baghdad, apologized to Ibrahim al-Jammal, insisted that he forgives him. And when Ibrahim al-Jammal forgave him and embraced him and hugged him and kissed him on his cheeks, He looked up and said, "Oh Allah, be a witness." And then he went back to Medina to do ziyarah of Imam al-Qadim, and that is when the Imam allowed it. So it is something that we would think is trivial, or we might have said to the Imam, just, I can't go all the way back. I'll go back and tell him I'm sorry, right? But the Imam insisted that when you come for our ziyarah, make sure you come after you have purified yourselves. So this is there also in the adab, not hurting somebody's feelings. That the wealth with which you go for ziyarah should be lawfully earned. There is no point in earning money that is unlawful and then giving it in sadaqah and going for ziyarat and building mosques, and it has no value. Right? Then, for example, Shaykh al-Baskumi says that even on your journey to ziyarah, be careful not to speak vain talk, not to engage in useless conversations, not to fight with people, not to argue with people, not to swear in Allah's name falsely. So you can see that even as you are proceeding for the ziyarah, there is this sense of, preparation. There is self-purification taking place. There is a journey. The ziyarah has essentially begun from the time you make an intention that I want to go for ziyarah, inshallah, on this day, and you find a group or a caravan and you make a commitment. Your ziyarah has begun. Right? There has to be that thought process already, what you're eating, how you're behaving, and mentally you're already excited about something very, very significant. And I'll make a point here in a minute. The other things that is said about ziyarah, when you get to your destination, to Karbala or wherever you are, before you go to the haram, you do ghusl again. Again, there is self-purification. You put on clean clothes. While you are there for ziyarah, you stay in the state of tahara all the time. That means you are always in wudu. You go to the washroom, you come out, you do wudu again. Okay. You can see that emphasis on purity all the time. When you go to the haram, you wear clean clothes, preferably white clothes. You apply perfume, except in the case of Abu Abdullah. Except for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, in the case of other alayhi salam, you apply perfume. This is constantly being emphasized, the idea of purity, purity, purity. What it therefore means to us, essentially, is that people who go for ziyarah are of two kinds. There are some people who go for ziyarat with this thought in mind that I'm going to visit the grave of the Imam. And there are others who go with this in mind that I'm going to visit the Imam. And this is very significant, because if we change our perception, and if we go with this thought, I'm not going to visit the grave of the Imam, I'm going to visit the Imam himself, then my whole ziyarat changes, because now I'm a little more on guard. Otherwise, when you go for ziyarat, you will see people just laughing, joking, sitting in the haram, backbiting, because to them they have come to a grave, they have not come to the Imam. If the Imam was sitting in front of them, they would not behave the way they do. That is why before you enter, you must ask for permission, you must humble your heart, and the hadith says that if one tear comes from your eyes before you enter, then know that you have been, your request to enter has been accepted. There is a dua you recite before you go in, you ask for idhn, you ask for the Imam, do you permit me to enter? And if you look at the words, you even ask the angels who are appointed to that haram. You say to the angel as well, do you permit me to enter into this holy place? Now, when the Imams are asked that if I recite this, because my own limitation does not allow me to hear the reply from the Imam, how do I know my request to enter has been accepted? And the answer is, if one tear comes out of your eye, even the size of the wing of a fly, or even your eyes become a little moist before you go in, then you know that you have been allowed to enter, and you have been welcomed. Now you can imagine the pressure, right? Because now I'm setting out from here, but I'm thinking, what if no tear comes out? Do I still go in? Right? This is for us personally to think about. There is another thing now. So I want to sort of basically come towards a conclusion, but I want to set a minimum expectation and a maximum goal or yardstick for ourselves when we go for ziyarah. At a minimum, if we are going for ziyarah, we must go with this in mind, that I am not going to visit the grave of the Imam, but I'm going to visit the Imam. Therefore, the constant awareness of where I'm going, purifying myself, making something out of that is very, very important. I remember in 2009, when I was blessed with the opportunity of Karbala, that was the first time and the only time I have been. And in fact, Zulfikar was with us as well at the time in the same group. When we went to Najaf, we went to meet some of the Marajis, and we went to see Ayatollah Bashir Najafi, and he was giving us some advice. There was one thing he said that was, that sort of stayed with me, that was quite, I thought, a beautiful analogy. He said, look, sometimes even if you don't do something, if you hang around something or someone, it leaves an effect on you. He said, if you, for example, are not a smoker, but you hang around somebody who smokes, when you leave the smoker and you come back home, your family will know that you are around a smoker, right? Because your clothes will smell of smoke. And they will ask you, why are you smoking? Or why are you hanging around somebody? Like, why is everything around you smelling of cigarette smoke, right? If you go out and work in a sewage or whatever, and you come home, right? They will know even before you open the door, that you have been in a very smelly place. The converse of that, what Ayatollah Bashir Najafi was saying is, if you are a person who sells perfume, or you go hang out in a shop that sells perfume, so you're not actually selling the perfume, you just go to the shop that sells attar, especially in the Middle East, they have these oil-based perfumes, rather than those French perfumes. If you hang around that shop long enough, try a few samples and whatever, when you come home, there will be a fragrance from your body, from your clothes, to show that you have been touched by that. So he says, if you go back to your countries and you tell somebody, I went for the ziyarat of Hussein, and if he was to question, what is the proof? How do I know you're not just pulling a fast one on me? So he says, think about this. If you have come to Karbala, he says, take something from here in such a way that when you go back, there is a fragrance of Hussein with you. That somebody should know that you have gone somewhere so special, it has touched you in some way. Now, it doesn't have to be a literal fragrance, but it could be a change in our lives. Somebody might just notice and say, you used to be very hot-tempered. How come you're so compassionate now? You don't lose your temper as much. Or you are so impatient. Why is there so much patience in you? Or you never used to pray so much. How come you enjoy praying so much now? Right? This is what Hussein can do for a person. He can change a person completely. So this is a minimum. If we want something higher, which I've been saying the maximum, then I think one of the reasons we go for ziyarah is to actually, for a short period of time, live like the Imam did and walk in his footsteps so closely that we actually imitate a certain time period or a certain action that he himself had performed in his life. It is almost as if you go there as an actor and you pretend to be the Imam and behave like him. Not that we can become like him. And I want to give you proof of this and then end, inshallah. You see, when you go for the ziyarat of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, sallallahu there are some unique recommendations that you don't see for any other Imam. And this was something that when I first read it, the first time I went to Mashhad, I really began thinking, why? It says, for example, that when you set out from your, hotel or your, caravan or wherever you have camped in Mashhad, as you're going to the haram of Imam Rida alayhi salam, and you've put on your clean clothes and you've done ghusl and so on, it says it is recommended that you go bare feet. Now obviously if it's winter, it's very cold and it can cause harm to your health or cause you a lot of inconvenience, then you wouldn't do it. But if you went when the weather was warm, then you could easily do that. Right? it says you go bare feet and you walk very slowly. You walk with waqar and sakina, meaning you walk with dignity and with tranquility, with a sense of peace around you. And you take short steps. And as you walk towards his rawda, as to the place where he's buried, you occasionally look towards the heavens and you do takbir. And you say, Allahu Akbar, and then you walk again with dignity, with calmness, with tranquility, bare feet, taking short steps, looking to the heavens, Subhanallah, praising Allah, right? Until you come to his door. Now, we begin to ask why. When you start looking at history, you find a very interesting incident, that when Imam Rida alayhi salam was taken to Khurasan, there was an occasion when Ma'mun forced Imam Rida alayhi salam to lead the Eid prayers. Because the Imam had told him that I will not get involved in your government, in hiring anyone, in being any part of it. And Ma'mun was trying to push him towards that direction. So he said to the Imam that tomorrow, the day of Eid, I want you to lead the Eid prayers. And the Imam said, we had a deal, I would not do any public presentation or leading in any sense. He said, no, you have to. So the Imam said to Ma'mun, in that case, I will go for the Eid prayers to the mosque or to the place of Eid, the Eid Musalla, the way my grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Ma'mun did not understand this. He said, go the way you want. And then the books of hadith say that when the next day came, Imam Rida alayhi salam, he did ghusl, he put on clean white clothes, he removed his shoes, he went bare feet, he took a stick in his hand, and all the other soldiers and commanders and high-ranking officers of Ma'mun, when they saw this, they all came down from their horses, they all removed their shoes, right? Some of them began cutting the straps of their sandals and all, and they all began walking behind him. And he said to his servants, he had some servants with him, he said to them, do what I do and repeat and say whatever I say. And he went out walking to the Eid Musalla and he began saying Allahu Akbar, and he would walk a few steps with waqar and with sakina and with dignity and tranquility, and as he walked he would look up to the skies and he would do takbir and tasbih. And Shaykh Mufid alayhi rahmah in his Kitab al-Irshad, he says that when Ar-Rida alayhi salam began doing this, because of his presence and because of his personality that is so powerful, and looking at the heavens and doing takbir, he says, وَكَأَنَّ الْحِيطَانِ تُجَاوِبُهُ. It seemed as if the walls of Khurasan, of Maru, and of the place he was, began responding to him. People came out of their homes to look at this procession. Everyone there was crying and weeping uncontrollably. And as he would say, Allahu Akbar, he says, the walls were replying, Allahu Akbar. And it became so intense, so powerful an experience, that one of the people of Ma'mun came running to Ma'mun and said to him, if Ar-Rida makes it to the Eid Musalla, your kingdom is gone. He will overthrow you with this Eid Salah. He has moved people with such intensity. The atmosphere is so intense. And Ma'mun sent a message to the Imam while he was walking to the Eid Musalla to say, we have burdened you and you are excused from this burden. And the Imam asked for his sandals. He put on his sandals, he asked for a horse. He got on the horse and he went back home. Now do you see the relationship between what you are told to do with what the Imam did? You cannot ignore this. It is as if when the Imams are telling you to do this when you go to Mashhad, they are telling you that for the time you are in Mashhad, become Imam Rida. Pretend to be him. Feel for a moment what it is. You cannot feel it, you cannot become him. But this is what the idea of being a Shia is, isn't it? Being a Shia means you match him so closely that he begins to see signs of his values and his qualities in you. He begins to see, just like when you have your own son and you train him and you raise him, you hope to give him the best values that you got in life. And the more he begins to reflect those values, the more proud you are of him, the happier you are of him, isn't it? In the same way, the Imams being spiritual fathers, it gives them joy when they see us becoming like them, even though we may not be able to reach their status. You see, for example, I give you one final example and end. The same thing you will see with Imam Hussein alayhi salam. If you look at the adab of going to Karbala, to going to Imam Hussein's haram, what does it tell you? It says that when you go to Karbala, on the day that you have decided to go to the haram of Hussein, at the time that you are going, make sure you are hungry, make sure you are thirsty, right? Do not put any perfume. Maybe put some of the dust of Karbala on yourself. As you walk to the haram, lower your gaze to the ground. Walk to the Imam while you are in a state of being heartbroken. These are the actual words in Mafatih al-Jinan, that as you go to Hussein, you should feel you are heartbroken, despondent. Do you see how, once again, what the Imams are saying is, if you are coming to me to Karbala, then while you are in Karbala, become Hussein. Because this is what Hussein was on the day of Ashura. He was hungry, he was thirsty, he was covered with dust, and he was crying, and he was heartbroken. We are told, for example, that when Hussein got up from the body of his brother Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, that the books of Masaib have narrated, it says that when Hussein got up and after he had said, Al-an inkasara dhahri wa qillat hilati, now truly, O Abbas, my back has been broken. And we are told that as he walked back to the haram, he was heartbroken with inkisar al-qalb. He was crying and wiping his tears on the sleeves of his shirt as he walked. The same we are told when he came to the body of his son Ali al-Akbar, that Hussein, for all the companions whom he lost, he would keep their head on his lap. But for Ali al-Akbar, he did not keep his head on his lap. We are told Hussein inkabba ala wajhihi, he threw himself on the body of Akbar. Then he placed one of his cheeks on the cheek of Akbar and said, Bunayya, Bunayya, ad-dunya ba'daka al-afa. My son, this world has lost meaning after you. So Hussein wants the same thing. If you come to Karbala, then this world must lose meaning to you before you enter the haram of Hussein. In the coming days and nights, we will be crying for the first grandson of the Prophet, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, is well on the 7th of Safar. And I wish to mention some of his masaib as well. That if you went to Medina, then how do you become Hassan? You see, Imam Hassan alayhi salam was madloom. At the time that he was in Medina, Muawiyah kept him to all intent and purpose like a man who was under house arrest. He was surrounded with oppression, with a government that was oppressive. And then, even after he was buried, the last century, again his grave was disrespected when they bulldozed Jannatul Baqi. And that state of fear and oppression remains to this day. So when you go to Medina, you have the opportunity as well to experience that state of fear and oppression that the Ahlul Bayt were covered in the times of the Umayyads. In the case of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, of course, his madhulmiya does not end with his shahadat only. When Ja'da had poisoned him, and the Imam, his body was convulsing with the poison for several days. And when Hussein alayhi salam saw his brother Hassan alayhi salam throw up some of the parts of his liver in a tray, even then the masaib of Hassan does not end. Because Imam Hassan had one last request of his brother Hussein. He said, Oh Hussein, when I have passed away and you have given me ghusl and kafan, my wish and desire is that you bury me near my grandfather Rasulullah. But when Hussein took the body of Hassan, then the likes of Aisha and Marwan came out and shot arrows at the body of Hassan. 70 arrows, we are told in one riwayah, were shot on the body of Hassan. This was not a small masa'ib, because in Medina, the young men of Banu Hashim were there. Abu Fadl al-Abbas was there. Muslim ibn Aqil was there. Muhammad al-Hanafiya was there. Imam Hussein was there. We can only begin to imagine how enraged Abu Fadl al-Abbas was at this. But Hassan had made a wasiyah as well, that if they do not allow you to bury me near my grandfather,